Welcome to this design talk. We're at Learning Design Lab, Stockholm University. My name is Staffan Selander, and I'm sitting here with my colleague
Morten Misfeldt. I'm a professor at Aalborg University in the group ICT and Designs for Learning.
We have a journal together, Designs for Learning, and we also cooperate around the biannual conferences, Designs for Learning.
Yes.
How would you describe your interest in this cooperation?
Yes. So we in Aalborg University, Copenhagen, are working very much with how computers and ICT informs, changes, transforms learning processes. And what we see in this collaboration is that you here in Stockholm, at Stockholm University, have a very specific way of conceptualizing learning as something you do rather than something you are, in a sense, rather than consuming content. And this conceptualization of learning helps us in understanding what ICT do in school situations and how ICT can support a transformation of schools and towards a more focus on what students do, how they create representations, how they make meaning with the artifacts and representations that they create with ICT.
And from my point of view, I would say that it was very thrilling to meet your tradition of working with and enhancing, more open learning environments like project works that's very well developed in Denmark, continuing education we have together. So there seems to be some kind of Scandinavian or Nordic tradition of education, looking at it in a wider sense. And that also makes interesting questions around relation between what's going on in school and learning outside school in different contexts.
Yes, and we can see the relation between in school and out of school is currently, there's a lot of things going on right now. For instance, in the area of mathematics or computational thinking, where, at least in Denmark, there's an increasing movement towards thinking in, can we learn students how to program their own video games? Can we teach them the basics of programming? Not so that they become kind of computational literate, but in order for them to create their own stuff with ICT, develop their own games, animations, and so on. And this cuts across the distinction between out-of-school activities, club activities, and in-school activities, eventually informing mathematics education, mathematics curriculum in school.
And that's interesting because I think it's a growing interest also in our country to talk about programming as a possible new subject in the school. And it might even be that in 20 years' time it's as strong as mathematics because it's logic, but it's logic in a different way.
Yeah, but there's a big kind of debate about that, and you can take different stands in that debate, of course. But I think what you do in conceptualizing learning as a design process, a process of creating artifacts, creating representations, and making meaning, you're actually in a position where you can kind of understand what is mathematical doing in a way where you can see that what the students do when they create Flappy Birds and they want their Flappy Bird game to be very difficult is to some extent system thinking, mathematical thinking. They are designing with mathematics in a sense.
Yes. Yeah.
One of the things that I have done, inspired by your concept of designs for learning, or the collaboration that we have around designs for learning, is that I have focused on what students do when they develop games in a mathematical classroom, not in their own time, but in a mathematical classroom dedicated to both investigating a special mathematical topic. It could be multiplication or another topic, and then they do a game about that. It could be a simple game that kind of a linear game where you move your token around, and if you meet a star, then you have to do a multiplication task. So that's kind of the most simple version. But you could also do more complicated gameplay that allows the students to investigate, talk about, discuss. How are we understanding the topic of multiplication here?
And I think that's a very interesting example of designs in the learning process, but also of a multimodal understanding of how meaning is made with different kind of resources. And it also leads to the question of agency, that the learner has, in a way, greater agency in their own activity and more responsibility. And that also, in a sense, I would say, will change our understanding what schooling will be about in the future.
I agree with you, and now again I come to think about how the design metaphor, or whatever we want to call it, are powerful when we talk about learning, because design, if learning is design, then the agency in a learning process, I mean, learning is not something that you are that's something someone do to you. It's something that you do when you make meaning in the world.
Exactly. When we talk about these design concepts for education and learning, for me it's like we have worked with that for a few years, and still we are only in the beginning.
Well, definitely, and I think if we should say something about where this is heading, I mean, we have the journal. We are expanding the collaboration to not just be Stockholm and Copenhagen, but now Oslo is coming in, and so we are trying to negotiate a Nordic version of how should we conceptualize learning in relation to the design metaphor. I hope for it to have some impact, both in our understanding of learning processes in school, but also in the metaphor that we bring to the school for what it should aim for. That we should increasingly aim for student agency, meaning-making processes, and creative processes actually also in school settings.
Thank you very much.